Is okay. What's going on, everybody? I'm Eric Lindquist. This is the Monkey Knife Fight Strategy Show, a new show we're debuting here at Awesemo. I'm sitting in sidecar next to Greg Ehrenberg. Greg, how are you doing this morning?
I've never done a show where you were the host before. I'm usually the host, but this is I have four shows on my schedule today. And I was like, hey, I think Eric might be a little bit more prepared. I'm going to push the hosting duties on him for this one. I like the mix up. I like the change of roles here. You did come out with a totally different tone than we usually had. You had almost like a vacation vibe where it was like concierge almost. We're like, hey, welcome to our hotel. Welcome. So, hey, listen, you come with a little bit different energy as a host, but it's okay. I could deal with
I
it.
just want to do right by Monkey Knife Fight. That's really what it comes down to. Is we are here to talk a little bit about their product. They are a phenomenal site, and if you have not gotten an opportunity to go play over there, that is what we are here to do today. It's a player props based contest that they have for different sports: NBA, MLB, UFC, PGA, esports, soccer. They literally have kind of a little bit of everything going on over there. What you have to do right now, if you are not yet a member of Monkey Knife Fight, you have to go over there, use promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, and you get up $100 free first match deposit bonus. And then also, as if that wasn't good enough, there's also a free contest going for new users today. It is called the Freak versus Buckets Challenge, which, if you're thinking about that correctly, it is Giannis versus Jimmy Butler. They have points that are listed there. They have their player props based points that they have listed. And all you have to do is pick whether you want the over or the under. And we're going to be talking a lot about those as we go down the line with some of these. But do you have any kind of a lean, Greg, right now? If you go over there, Giannis is 28.5, Jimmy Butler's 23.5. Which direction would you be taking on those to get it started?
So the 23.5 on Butler, I think that's a pretty fair number. However, the Giannis one, I think it definitely used to be higher. So something we've seen with the Bucks so far in the postseason this year is a lot more willingness from Budenholzer to play his starters extended minutes in the playoffs, something he did not want to do at all last year. But it's something this year we're seeing him do. In the first game of the series against the Miami Heat, game went to overtime. Giannis ends up playing 45.5 minutes. We played over 40 minutes in regulation. While he only played 31 minutes in last game, you could have very easily said he should have played less minutes than that because the game was not remotely competitive, but he still had the starters out there in the fourth quarter. So Budenholzer, I think he's aware of the situation. The team massively underperformed in the playoffs last year. I think he's aware if something happens this year where they don't make a playoff run, there's a chance Mike Budenholzer loses his job. So as a result, he's playing the starters more minutes, and that's something that's going to ultimately lead to more counting stats for Giannis. So hard for me to really have a strong lead on the Jimmy Butler number, but give me the over 28.5 on Giannis for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm on board with that too. You're going to see him play a lot of minutes pretty much every single time out, and that's a fantastic thing for the best fantasy player on the planet. The Jimmy Butler number is pretty darn efficient, but considering it's free, again, it's a free contest to be able to jump in and play. I'm probably going to be leaning a little bit on the over there. This is a game, they're down 2-0. They're going back into Miami. If they're going to win, they're going to have to ride the coattails of Jimmy Butler. I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win, but definitely think that I'd be leaning a tiny bit on the over there. Plus, if I'm going to be taking the over on Giannis, that also helps the expected game flow, where if the game ends up shooting out, it's got a pretty high total as is. Those are the two most important players on the floor. So as we get going here, we're going to take a look at a couple of the other props that they have going on, a couple of the different types of gameplays. If you aren't familiar with it, head on over there. Again, promo code Awesemo, $100 first deposit match bonus. Let's just kind of get it started. Let's go to the homepage here. We've got the star shootout. We've got an all-day star shootout. There are a number of ways that you can be playing on Monkey Knife Fight. They have what is called the more or less contests. You can click on the more or less. There are points that exist next to everybody. So you see Damian Lillard and Nikola Jokic. This is what I think is one of the more important parts of what we're going to be talking about today. If you're an Awesemo Plus user, you can go to the projected stats page. And if you just have them open in tabs next to each other, you can click back and forth and see whether or not these are advantageous numbers or not. You have the projected stats page. Damian Lillard, right now, if you type him in, 29.31 expected points for him, and that number's up at 33.5, coming off of 2 phenomenal games. So for Awesemo, we would be leaning a little bit on the under there. But Nikola Jokic is even better, 32.5 points, 26.95 expected points. Those look like 2 pretty solid unders. Greg, do you agree with that?
Yeah. So the other thing to mention too is if you're putting these guys in a lineup together, there's a correlation here, right? So I think if you're going to play both these guys together, it makes sense to think like, hey, maybe this game is a little bit lower scoring. And that's the type of thing. If maybe the pace is going to be a little bit slower than otherwise expected, there's reason to think that both of them would correlate to more towards the under. And that's actually something also getting back to when we talked about Giannis versus Jimmy Butler before. I think that if we're going to be on the over for Giannis, maybe it makes a little more sense to also be on the over for Butler, even though we both agree the number's probably right about fair. There's just a little bit of added correlation having the over number with Jimmy Butler when we both like the over for Giannis. But yeah, I agree. Both these guys we have projected to be under those numbers. And there's definitely added correlation having them together. Maybe this is a game that ultimately ends up being, I don't know, let's say 110, 105 as a final score, maybe a little down pace than normal. And then you have, even less possessions for these guys to be able to score points.
So if you click on the less for both of those, if you click less and less, you then get buy-in amounts that are put underneath, starting at $2, ranging all the way up to $1,000, depending on what kind of a price range you're interested in playing. I ended up just playing the $5. I felt pretty good about that, getting my feet wet into Monkey Knife Fight for tonight. That had great rhyming, and I didn't even try. But hitting the less on both of those, I think that's probably a good way to get started as we're going across these. Now, there are also multipliers, so it's not like you just take the unders and you're getting paid out here and there. This is a 3.6x multiplier, meaning that for the $5 that you're putting in, it would be an $8 or an $18 return on your investment, which is pretty darn nifty. As you're going across to some of these other ones, you have more or less for Devin Booker and Nurkic. You'll have rebounds and points. Again, that projected stats page that is sitting right next to it is such an important characteristic of what you can do at Monkey Knife Fight and how you can really have a little bit of an edge. It is a house-based game. Monkey Knife Fight we're not peer-to-peer by any means. So going across to a couple more of these, I think looking at something like a rapid fire where you have three different props that are listed. Why don't we jump over? Yeah. So we have the more or less there as well. Those are fantasy points. Now, if you're going to be looking at the fantasy point numbers, they're all based in what would be FanDuel scoring for us who are familiar with the DFS. If you're going to be doing any of the fantasy points on rapid fire or more or less or any of these, there are numbers that have a little bit of inflated numbers. So Anthony Davis has one where he's plus 6.5 fantasy points. We've got this one that's pulled up on the screen right now. We have Giannis. Nikola Jokic is getting 1.5 fantasy points next to Giannis. That seems pretty efficient. Anthony Davis plus 2.5 fantasy points next to Damian Lillard. That's another one that's going to be pretty darn close. But if you can go down the line and you're going back and forth between the FanDuel projections and this, you're going to find some edges. You're going to find some spots where you can really get your money in a good spot. Greg, is there anything that sticks out to you as we're kind of scrolling through some of these? Are you taking a look at your FanDuel projections and kind of directly correlating those to some of these plays?
So yeah, I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. And by the way, also, so for people who, I would assume that everybody would generally be aware when they understand what we're talking about, we say FanDuel scoring, but every point is worth a point. Turnovers are -1 point. Blocks and steals are each 3 points. Then we've got an assist is 1.5 points. A rebound is 1.2 points. So that's one of the reasons also right now we're looking at the in the Awesemo projections while we have the FanDuel projections pulled up just because it's going to be the same number. So that's a pretty good guideline to use if you're trying to figure out like, hey, do I think that this number for Giannis, do I think it's too high or too low? I think it's a good reference point to look at our FanDuel projections.
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes so much easier having that data that's available to you and going back and forth and finding, because not everything is like listed in a way where we know exactly where the rebounds or where the points are. So you really are kind of pulling each one up individually and taking a look and seeing whether or not they're efficient numbers, whether or not there might be a small edge here or there to be on one side or the other. Some of these player versus player spots, I really do like some of those. It's kind of like matchups in golf, and there is a golf product that they have on Monkey Knife Fight that's awfully fun. That is definitely one of my favorite parts of the website. But if we're looking at this one specifically, Giannis and Nikola Jokic are so close in projection. I would probably be leaning a little bit towards Nikola Jokic, just getting that little bit of a bonus. And probably same thing with Anthony Davis. I think Damian Lillard's probably somebody that I'm a little bit lighter on tonight compared to what the field will be on DFS. I think that it would make sense to kind of be lighter on him on Monkey Knife Fight as well. Is there any kind of a correlation for you there as well, where you might want to be making some of the same plays and shorting the same players on Monkey Knife Fight as you are, say, on FanDuel?
So what was the can we go back to the side? What was the spread on Jokic versus Giannis? I actually have Giannis projected quite a bit higher for me personally.
It's only 1.5 fantasy points on Jokic. So you're taking the Giannis edge of that, or the Giannis side of that?
Pretty significantly for me. It makes such a big difference to me that Giannis is playing all these extra minutes in the playoffs. So in the regular season this year, Giannis played 33 minutes per game and averaged 54.11 Monkey Knife Fight points. Whereas we look at Jokic's numbers for the year, he played, bringing up his box scores really quick, he played 34 and a half minutes per game and scored 54.73 Monkey Knife Fight points. But the other thing also that's kind of interesting about Jokic's workload so far to open the playoffs, he's not playing ridiculous minutes. We've seen him in 2 playoff games play 35 and 31 minutes. So overall, I'm looking at Giannis versus Jokic. Giannis is a slightly better points per minute fantasy producer. And I'm also expecting Giannis to play more minutes tonight, given what we've seen so far, which is, it's kind of counterintuitive to what I said before about how we've seen the Bucks run the rotations in the playoffs in the past. But we've seen Giannis play over 40 minutes in regulation of a competitive game, and we're only seeing Jokic average 33 minutes per game. So for me tonight, I actually gave Giannis 39 minutes. I gave Jokic 36 minutes, and that's going to give Giannis quite a few more fantasy points in my own personal projection. So for me, if somebody told me for sure Jokic is going to play 40 minutes, then I'd say, hey, that's pretty close. I would still lean towards Giannis, and I don't really think that's going to be the case for Jokic.
I think that's probably a pretty short take. I don't know. Nikola Jokic is somebody that hasn't really even seen a ceiling. He only played 31 and 35 or 36 minutes. He hasn't played that many minutes in the last 2 games, putting up right around 53, 55 fantasy points on FanDuel in both of those outings, from what I remember looking at it last night. I think that this is a spot where Nikola Jokic still has a ceiling, still has 38 or 40 minutes in him as well. This game is projected to stay pretty close as well. Like both this game and the Milwaukee game, I think it was only a 2-point spread for that one. I think that we're probably in a spot where that's a pretty close line. But if you have a lean like Greg does, that's where you really want to kind of take advantage of it. And you're able to play whatever buy-in level you want. This isn't like playing on another DFS site where you have to play the certain contests in order to get the certain billings. Like you can play whatever level you want. And going all the way down to more or less, you have 125x. You can pick 9 player props or 8 player props going straight in a line and have an ability to win, $250 on a $2 investment, just being able to tune into 1 or 2 games specifically for the evening. So there are a number of ways that you can kind of get your feet wet over at Monkey Knife Fight. Let's go over to, let me see here. We've got the triple-double bonuses as well. So right now, Monkey Knife Fight is running a triple-double bonus pool. So it's a great, a triple-double is a pretty tough outcome. But if you put only $5 on picking 3 players, and if any one of them hits a triple-double, you're able to get a little bit of extra money on your investment there. But if all 3 were to hit in your lineup and you have a minimum of $5 put into play on it, you can get up to $5,000 right now, and $500 are added to the pool every single day that does not occur. Now, it's very difficult for 3 players to get a triple-double in the same night. It's extremely difficult, but you're still able to just play the regular prop like you normally would, and it's almost just like a little added bonus to it. So, Greg, I'm going to ask you about triple doubles tonight. Which player do you think is the most likely to get a triple double? And then if you had to pick two other players to complement them in a lineup, who are you picking?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, this this isn't my favorite thing to go out and pick triple doubles, but if I had to pick one guy, it would be Jokic as the player who I think is most likely to put up a triple double today. And it's just based on the numbers we saw him average for the regular season. He averaged 26.6 points, 10.9 rebounds, and 8.2 assists. So just on that kind of background, he's way more likely to triple double basically than any other player in the league, with Russell Westbrook notwithstanding. I think that Jokic, I don't know exactly all the triple double numbers off the top of my head, but I assume Jokic finished with the second most triple doubles in the league behind Russell Westbrook. But he's still not overly likely to get a triple double to where I think this is the most advantageous play.
Yeah, probably true. I'm going to actually pull that up right now. That is a good thing to know. We had 38 by Russell Westbrook this year. Is that any good? Nikola Jokic, second at 16. James Harden at 12. Giannis has 7. So if I'm just looking straight off of this from the regular season, and if you're going to like Giannis playing a little bit more minutes, Nikola Jokic and Giannis feel like a pretty easy 1-2. LeBron James had 5. Jimmy Butler had 4. Would you have a priority on which one of those two? Because I think Jimmy Butler might be the lesser played of the two by people if they're going to be trying for that $5,000 bonus. I might be putting a lineup in, I think, with Jimmy Butler. That would make the most sense to me.
Yeah, so I mean, my three guys would be Jokic, Jimmy Butler, and LeBron James. There just weren't quite enough assists for Giannis on a game-to-game basis for me to trust it. And I think one of the main reasons we saw a downtick in his assist numbers this year is just because of the addition of Jrue Holiday. So Giannis only averaged 5.8 assists per game this year, and that's something that makes it, pretty hard for me to reliably say that he's all that likely to have a triple-double. He hasn't had more than 6 assists in a game since May 5th against the Wizards. The last time he had 10 assists in a game was March 20th against the Spurs, and he didn't have 10 rebounds in that game. So the last time he actually had a triple-double was going back to March 15th against the Wizards. So number one, that was a really good matchup. And then also off the top of my head, I think they might have had a guy or two out in that spot. But in general, one of the things to look at here with Giannis in the playoffs is don't forget that while he's also playing extra minutes, there's also more minutes going to Jrue Holiday. There's more minutes going to Chris Middleton. These are guys who are also capable playmakers. So to me, I don't really think Giannis is all that likely to get a triple-double individually. My leans would be towards Jokic, Butler, and LeBron. And then something about LeBron's total triple-double numbers for the year is don't forget he missed a very large chunk of the season. So he for sure would have had more triple-doubles if he didn't miss, half the season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that those would kind of be the three. LeBron James, yeah, kind of throwing him into the mix too. Giannis, Jokic, any mixture, I think, of those four, finding a way to get a little bit unique so that you're not splitting it with a bunch of people if they're going to be having the same idea as us to go and try for that 5K. But I think something that might be fun to do right now with you as we're here with Chris. We got producer Chris taking care of us here today. Let's kind of go through a mock of going through like the process of putting together a lineup, putting together a couple of these plays. Let's go to the Phoenix and Los Angeles Lakers. What would be showdown, full game. Let's do the full game of Lakers and Phoenix, if we could, as we are looking at the screen. Beautiful. So we have Devin Booker and Anthony Davis there, the more or less. Let's do one that's going to be fantasy point based. Let's go to the second more or less. So we have Anthony Davis and Devin Booker. We have 50.5 fantasy points. Again, this is going to be based in FanDuel scoring. And Devin Booker, 41.5. If we jump over to the projected stats page and we type in Anthony Davis, we have right now a projection of 45.4 sitting there for Anthony Davis, significantly lower than the number that exists over there on that page. If we do the same thing, looking at Devin Booker over on the projected stats page, we have 37.77. Both of those look like pretty darn good unders for the projections. Now, what I would be curious of is whether or not that's factoring in playoff minutes for both. But Greg, do you have kind of a lean on that? Would you agree on taking unders for those together?
So what is the Chris, can you go back to the other page really quick so I could see what the total number was? So we have 50.5 for Davis. Yeah, I like the under on that number. 4.5 for Booker. I also like the under for him there also. The thing that makes this a little wonky though is the status of Chris Paul. So this is something that we've brought up a lot over the last couple of slates, and yesterday actually something that was pretty key for the slate is that we had, I don't know, what was it, 20, 15 minutes before the game started, news came out that Chris Paul was apparently his shoulder was bothering him so much to the point that he was struggling to get his shirt off in pregame warmups. And that was something that kind of rang some alarm bells. And I know that you were already pretty heavy on campaign for that particular slate. You were trying to swap onto him a bunch. It was something that News got in our premium Slack chat. He had posted some information about it. And it was something that really changed my overall outlook on Chris Paul for that slate. Also changed my outlook then for guys like Campaign, Devin Booker. So that Devin Booker number right now at 41.5, I would lean towards the under. But if we have some other situation with Chris Paul where we find out all of a sudden, like, hey, Chris Paul is compromised tonight, which not crazy to think after how the last couple of games have played out, then I'd feel a little less confident in the under for Chris Paul. But either way, Anthony Davis, the under, I definitely like that.
Yeah, I love that. I think both look like fantastic unders, and yeah, the campaign call worked out pretty well. Even a chalk donkey finds a acorn once in a while. It felt very nice. But let's take a look at one more here as we're going down the line. So we just looked at the fantasy points. Let's look at a more heavily multiplied thing. Let's look at a 5x more or less. So if you can scroll over to the more or less 5x, beautiful. So we have Devin Booker. 28.5 points. So now instead of looking at fantasy points, we're looking at specific points. Devin Booker gets most of his fantasy points via scoring, but still 28.5, a lofty number. LeBron James, 8.5 assists, and DeAndre Ayton, 11.5 rebounds. So this really kind of is all encompassing of all the stats, and whether it's the player prop tool at Awesemo, whether it's the DFS projections page, we have the opportunity. So Devin Booker right now on the projected stats, looking at right now, 25.72 expected points. That's going to be an under for me for sure, I believe. LeBron James, as we're looking at him as well. Now we're taking the under on his 8.5 assists, 7.72 expected assists for tonight. And finally, DeAndre Ayton, who's been playing very, very well in this series of late, has been, with Andre Drummond and Anthony Davis on the floor. He has, like, by necessity, been more of a centerpiece in this series. 11.5 rebounds, expected 12.66. He's going to be on the floor a bunch as long as he's not in foul trouble. Love the over there. Would you agree with any of those, Greg?
So the one that I feel, once again, it's going to depend on the Chris Paul news, but as of right now, he's listed as probable. I expect he's going to play. And let's say we get, whatever, 90% of Chris Paul. Even then, if I would bump up Devin Booker's usage a little bit, I would still be looking at the under on 28.5 points for Devin Booker. Right now, I have him fairly below that. And even if I gave him more usage, I think that would still probably only get him to, say, like 27.5 points or something like that for me. So to me, the under on Devin Booker, that's the play I'd feel the best about. For LeBron, the 8.5, it's about fair, but I would lean slightly towards the under, just because 9 assists is still a pretty lofty number to get to, even if he's been doing it fairly regularly as of late. And then even last game, LeBron, if you remember correctly, he only got an assist on the last play of the game. He threw a pass to Alex Caruso, and the Suns just kind of given up at that point. Alex Caruso went in for a dunk, so that got LeBron to his 9th assist in that game. But I would lean a little bit towards the under, and then 11.5 rebounds for DeAndre Ayton. To me, on that number, I would go towards the under as well. So one thing about going up against the Lakers is Ayton does have to battle with a lot of big bodies for rebounds. He's going up against Andre Drummond. He's going up against Anthony Davis. Even when the Lakers go to the bench, I assume that Montrezl Harrell is going to be out of the rotation again, but there's still Marcus Gasol coming off the bench as the backup center. It's a lot of capable rebounders, and while Ayton certainly is a good rebounder in his own right, and for the regular season, he averaged 10.6 rebounds per game. 12 is a pretty high number to actually expect him to get to on a regular basis. So slight lean on the 11.5 under as well.
But there is some incentive because it is a 5x prize. So if you put $2 in, you're getting 10 back. So even at the 50-50, if there's something where we have two really nice leans on the props for Devin Booker, for LeBron James, taking either the more or the less, whichever side you might be feeling on, it's a pretty efficient line. I feel like 11.5 is pretty darn good. If there's something else that might stick out more, go that direction. But for the most part, I think having some unders. The next more or less actually does have campaign involved in it. That would be a curious thing. If you take a look over to the next more or less right after the one that we just did, scroll one more over, we have Andre Drummond, Mikal Bridges, Cameron Payne, 4.5 assists for Cameron Payne. Now that would be kind of a talking point because these are where you're able to kind of react to late news, kind of like what we love to do around the industry for DFS. Right now we have an expected assist of 4.16. I think that's probably factoring in, considering we have 24 minutes for Cameron Payne. I think that that's expecting Chris Paul to be limited. If Chris Paul's feeling better, if we get word that, he's full go, that there's no issues today, that might be a great spot to be getting an under on too, no?
Yeah, I think all the unders across the board for a campaign makes sense in the event that Chris Paul is full go. Obviously, then if Chris Paul ends up not playing, then you lean towards the overs on campaign. Right now, Chris Paul is officially listed as probable to play. My expectation is he plays and is somewhat limited, but still, I think those numbers are a little high for campaign. It seems like it's kind of a hedge in the middle, right? Where it seems like the numbers are kind of in between. Is Chris Paul going to play? Is Chris Paul not going to play? And the projections kind of split the difference. So it does seem like there's value on either side, depending on what kind of update we get on Chris Paul. But as it currently stands, with me expecting that Chris Paul is going to play and get close-ish to his normal minutes, just give me all the unders for campaign.
Yeah. So this is basically how we are going through our process, trying to use all of the goodies and the tools at Awesemo to be able to try to have a couple of fun props that we can put some money on over at monkeyknifefight.com. So check it out. Again, that's Awesemo for up to $100 of a first match deposit bonus. And don't forget about that free contest that's going tonight, Freak versus Buckets. 100% free to be entering. All you have to do is predict whether Jimmy Butler has more or less than 23.5 points and Giannis has more or less than 27.5. If you predict both of those correctly, you win $15. So it's that simple. It's 100% free. So just head over there, check out all of those goodies. Any parting words for the people, Greg Ehrenberg?
No, I mean, the biggest thing for this slate that's going to go for all DFS is just look out for Chris Paul, not just overall what the injury report brings, but then also some of the beat reporter information. If we get something where it's like, hey, Chris Paul, like last one, or something weird, it's like he can't take his shirt off without some sort of struggle. Maybe there's something like that, like, hey, Chris Paul is trying to tie his shoe and isn't able to do it. Maybe that would be an indication that the shoulders and feeling great. So I'll just be on the lookout for any Chris Paul updates.
Tying your shoe, playing in an NBA basketball game, basically the same thing for the most part. Yeah, if you probably can't do one, it's going to be tough to do the other, I would have to guess. But he's Greg. I'm Eric. Monkey Knife Fight, thank you so much for checking out everything over here. To all the people out there that are tuning in, I hope you guys have a successful night. Check out Monkey Knife Fight. We are out of here. Good luck.